Ben Nicholson-Smith of At the Letters, MLB editor for Sportsnet. What's up, bro? How we doing?
Doing okay, JD. It's been a weird couple days. I feel like there's like an adrenaline crash that happens after the end of the season,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it felt like they had a chance to totally rewrite this thing, and now it's just nope to the same old situation, and in fact, actually worse than what it was a few days ago.
Worse. No, dude, 100% worse. Do we know when they're going to do the front office availability yet?
Not yet. I would expect Tuesday if I had to guess.
Okay, so yeah, it'll be all the way next week, right? Because these things can turn around pretty quick. And a lot of times when it's this, let's just say negative, they usually try to do it in a news dumpy day. So the move for them that would make sense actually is to do it on Wednesday because that's the Leafs season opener.
Oh, so then I'm changing my prediction to Wednesday
Yeah.
because that actually would be a pretty good idea on
Yeah,
their
that's
part.
the. Oh, actually, no. We got to get all our ducks lined up. It's Wednesday. It's Wednesday at 5 o'clock Eastern, so that all the clips when they get turned around, it's time for puck drop with the Leafs. Yeah, good prediction. I do want to ask you, what you want to ask later, but I want to read it. I'm going to start this today with a quote from one of your. You did really good work. Good job by you. Like I'm a fan. I like your stuff, but your couple pieces, you and Shy pumped out some really good content over the last couple of days. So, quote, this is
Well,
from
thanks.
BNS. This is from BNS's piece. Quote, it happened during the regular season when they ranked 26th out of 30 MLB teams in outs made on the bases and 29th out of 30 teams in stolen base efficiency. It happened in game 1 of the wild card series when Bichette's over aggressive base running cost the Blue Jays, and it happened in game 2 with Guerrero. End quote. How much of the base running problems, the maturity problems, are you laying at the feet of the players versus the management? Because I do think that a lot of what maybe we missed in the anger of the Barrios decision was that, yeah, 2 pivotal moments in the series came down to just kind of egregious mistakes. And we all debated the Bo Bichette one. And, some people think that you had to do it. I still believe that I'd rather be playing for the big inning and not have to do it. But yeah, where do you put the fault for this? Because I do think that going into this offseason, this has to be one of the major questions that's addressed.
Well, yeah, because we've talked all year about hey, like the Blue Jays, maybe they have these good numbers from like a WRC plus standpoint and a quality of contact standpoint, but they're just not scoring runs. How could this be? Well, maybe it's because you are one of the worst base running teams in Major League Baseball.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying that's the only reason. Obviously, there's some luck involved, but that definitely contributes. And being the second least efficient team in baseball when it comes to stealing bases, not good, not going to help things out. Same when it comes to making needless outs on the bases. We saw that all year. I think year long, that's something that falls at the hands of the coaching staff and the front office. It's just not good enough. They needed to get in the players' ears and tell Whit Merrifield, look, man, you're not as fast as you think you are. Stop
Hmm.
running. Stop taking these chances and go down the list. So that year long is on the coaches. I think moment to moment, it's on the players. I think in this playoff series, it's a combination of things. But Bo Bichette and Vlad Guerrero Jr. have to take a huge share of the responsibility there because Bo, in that situation, in my opinion, down 3, you can't be going. You can't take that risk. We all know it was an amazing play by Carlos Correa. It was unbelievable. But
It's
at
also
the same
Carlos Correa.
time, it's also Carlos Correa. That's the thing. It's not a
No.
secret. This guy
Yeah.
hasn't snuck up on people. So, and same with Vladdy, right? Yeah, sure, it's loud, but look, man, you have to err on the side of caution. The stakes are too big. And, it's funny because going into this series, I thought Vlad had some wise words saying that he needed to depend on his teammates. And I don't think Bo and Vlad fully did that. But in no way is this series loss entirely on their shoulders. And there's so many other places that we can place the blame.
Yeah, that's just it. And I've said this. I was talking about this yesterday. How you kind of blend traumas as a Toronto sports fan, right? Like you're looking and you're doing parallels between some of between some of the teams. But I do think that there is a little bit something to be said here for my first thought of looking at these free agents that could be leaving, right? It's essentially all the veterans on the team outside of like Springer, right? Like out of important, meaningful vets, a lot of them will be leaving this baseball team. And I'm going, this does feel like an inflection point for Vladdy and Bo, much like it was with the Leafs players when they kept surrounding them with, hey, it's Joe Thornton and it's Patrick Marleau, and they're going to help you grow up. And a lot of this baseball team felt a little bit like that too, where it's, hey, it's Chapman, it's Belt, it's Merrifield. These guys are going to be or Kiermaier. These are going to be some of the leaders in the clubhouse. But ultimately, the two biggest mistakes fall on two members of the core in the day-to-day. And so I think that there's going to be responsibility for them if they're both on the team moving forward, that it's going to be now incumbent upon those two players to be setting the example for the team. But I couldn't help but think back, like, yeah, John Schneider talked about this all year long, and the message didn't get through. And this was also a front office that clearly went into the season with a mandate of having much more maturity within the baseball team. That's part of the reason why they made the trades in the outfield. And then also being so much better on the base paths. I remember even like a lot of the preseason content being about how aggressive this team was going to be on the base paths and how they were going to turn more runs in because they were going to take advantage of the bigger bases, blah, 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 all these things. And I think that as we're kind of searching through and looking for the answer to the question of what needs to change, I do wonder when Shapiro evaluates all of this, how much he actually is going to say, you know what, these were two things that were at the desk of Atkins, these were things that were at the desk of Schneider, and these are actually going to play a pivotal, role in making a decision over the coming week.
Well, yeah, I think that if you're looking at how this all unfolded, like that's actually pretty embarrassing if you're the Blue Jays to, setting aside the pitching decision, which I'm sure we'll get to, but you know, you're trying to do every little thing right. And this is how you show up. Like to make those base running mistakes in that situation, somehow it didn't get through to the players. And so that is on the manager. End of the day, that is also on John Schneider. And you know, there are guys on this team who ran the bases really well, like a Kevin Kiermaier who was 14 for 15 stealing bases, but he's a free agent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like the Blue Jays taught Kevin Kiermaier how to run the bases either. He arrived here as a fully formed major league center fielder and played amazing all year long. So,
Mm-hmm.
when you look at some of these guys, Kevin Biggio, 5 for 7, like steadily made good decisions all season long. But there are other guys in this team that, from a base running standpoint, just were not there. And I think that contributes to a team that underwhelmed offensively. And more broadly, they need to take a look at their hitting because they were an okay offense. They were a really really bad base running team.
Mm-hmm.
Offensively, they were okay. They weren't really bad. They weren't really good. They were okay. But you have to aspire to more than okay. And so you have to look if something's okay, you have to look at it. You have to see if there's a way to make it better. And I just don't think that when you look at the biggest games of the year, yes, it's a small sample, but you also knew exactly who you were going to face.
Mm-hmm.
Paolo Lopez and Sonny Gray, you know exactly what they were going to throw, how they were going to approach you, and you come out of there with one run and one extra base hit. That is not good enough. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter how the Jays arranged their pitching or ran the bases. You score one run, you're going to lose.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think the question is going to come down to who should be helping Shapiro decide who those players are. But it's another strange offseason because free agency is not littered with incredible players, and you're losing guys: Belt, Chapman, Green, Ryu, Kiermaier, Hicks, Merrifield. So maybe we'll start with this. What do you think the over/under is on those guys returning? Because I said it at like one player.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think the Blue Jays should try to bring Kevin Kiermaier back because he's a really, really good player.
Yeah, but how big is the turf thing? Because that just seems to pop up all the time. Is this guy maybe wasn't too happy playing on turf for an entire season?
Well, my understanding before Kiermaier signed with the Blue Jays is that he would have, all things being equal, preferred to play on grass.
Mm-hmm.
But my understanding in talking to him and talking to others is that the number one motivator is trying
Money.
to win for
Oh.
Kevin Kiermaier. No, it's trying to win.
Yeah.
Literally.
Okay. All right.
I like where your mind went. But
Yeah.
like he's made his money. Like he's made a lot of money.
Uh-huh.
He wants to win. I'm telling you this, Kevin Kiermaier is not signing with the Rockies. He's not signing with the Royals.
Sure.
He is going to try to win.
So then maybe it's 1.5 then. Because I would think that they try to engage Kiermaier, Hicks, and then maybe Green, but that Belt retires, Chapman goes out of their price range, and that they want to move on. Merrifield is absolutely a 0%er in my opinion, and then same with Ryu.
Yeah, Merrifield, I would be very surprised if he comes back. I also think, Belt, it's touch and go as to whether he retires. I don't see Hicks returning. I don't see him coming back. I just don't think that. I just never got the sense that fit fully landed for those two sides. We'll see. Could be wrong. But Yeah, I mean, you need to. The Jays are going to be in the market for a lot this offseason. This team is going to look different in a substantial way by the time they report to spring.
So they're going to be in need for a lot. They don't know. Are you certain that they return the core pieces? And I think, like, I was even thinking to myself, what is the core of this team, right? When we're talking about the position players, because yeah, the pitching staff is set, right? That's very unlikely to change. I was kind of pitching the idea of maybe you go out and you flip one of these guys for some assets back, and then try to go in a free agency where starting pitching is a little bit deeper. And you've had some success, right? Like you landed Gossman, you landed Kikuchi, you landed Ryu. You're a pitcher's park now, so maybe that's appealing to some of these guys. But yeah, I don't think that ends up happening. So it feels like you're going to have to make some trade of consequence, no?
I wonder. I wonder. I think so. Like, first of all, we know that like this is an emotional time. I even like I've been veering more emotional with my takes than than normal. I think probably everyone has,
Mm.
including people within that front office. So it's probably step one is take a big step back. And they're probably not going to make that decision on October 6th or 7th or
Hmm.
8th. So, I don't, I think that's like the first part of it is they'll say, whoa, we got to slow this down a little bit. What the hell happened? Like, how did this happen? We thought we were a lot better than this. Now,
Hmm.
to me, like with Vladdy, like it's so interesting, right? Because I see people pointing to him, and of course, like if he had had a better year, the Blue Jays would have been in a different position. But
Hmm.
at the same time, this is a guy who's in his age 24 season. He's still showing up every single day. He's still trying his best. Obviously makes mistakes. I mean, there's no doubt. He makes mistakes. It was an underwhelming season. But it's not like he showed up as a 16-year-old and said, "I'm the next Miguel Cabrera." So I think at the same time, like Vlad Jr. isn't the problem with this team. As they move ahead, he has a chance to be really, really good.
Mm.
And I think he's obviously a core player on this team moving forward. Doesn't mean that he's going to be the next Albert Pujols or Miguel Cabrera, but he can still be a really, really good player. Maybe he hits free agency in a couple of years. Maybe that's it. Maybe he and Bo both leave. Like there's tons of turnover coming is the other thing with this team.
Hmm.
Jansen's 1 year from free agency. Biggio's 2 years away. Romano's like this whole core. And this is the frustrating part of this. Like they've gone these 3 seasons now where they've had good teams, zero playoff wins, zero positive experiences in the playoffs,
Hmm.
all negativity. And some of it's of their own creation. A lot of it is obviously, but at the same time, it's like this whole window is passing them by.
It already feels a little bit like it's passed them by. If I'm being dead honest, like the way that I feel about it is, I'm not optimistic about the idea that the Bo Bichette Vladimir Guerrero Jr. tandem ever wins, or that both of them are definitely here next year, or even if both of them, that it's 100% the right move to keep them. Like, hey, should you absolutely keep both? I think that there's going to be a case this offseason, depending on what the values are for both players. Here's what I would say. I don't think it's crazy for the front office to evaluate both guys and just say, hey, we're taking calls. Like, let us know what you think. Let us know what you have to offer for these two. But yeah, they're, what would you say? Like, yeah, quietly available is the way that I would put it. You're not shopping them. You're not calling teams asking, but you're also not hanging up the phone anymore if you call on either of them.
And I think the tough part about that is because like there's no harm in that. There's no harm in that. But the tough part about that is you just end up at a point where like you're talking about Vladdy, a guy who's coming off a down year, who just
Hmm.
made that big mistake. Like, what are you gonna get? He's two
So,
years
yeah.
away. He's a first baseman. Like, and like I just don't think you want to trade him for like 3 AA starting
No, no,
pitching
no.
prospects and a fourth outfielder. You know what I
No,
mean?
that's definitely not what you're doing. What I'm saying, if you're taking this trade, like I asked David Sampson yesterday, hey, what would the market be like for him? And he made it seem like it would still be robust. That there would be a lot of teams that would talk themselves into Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And if you think about, hey, like someone will say that to themselves. They'll go, this is still a name. This is someone that we can put in the middle of our lineup. This is someone who we have 2 years of control of. Like, there's a lot of upside for a team that would be trading for Vladdy. I think you're doing this trade knowing that you're not getting back necessarily the better player unless it's much more money or shorter term, right? Like, there's always like the Pete Alonso thing kicking out there. And I thought to myself a few times, would I not want to do a trade that centers around Pete Alonso for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. if I don't think Vladdy's going to be here in a couple of seasons? I kind of think yes. I think that that's the kind of move that a year ago you would have told yourself was absolutely insane. And right now I'm sitting with that going, I don't know. I don't know what the case against that is. Like you're losing potentially a year of Vladdy. It seems kind
I
of fine.
Yeah, I think to me, like 2 years of Vladdy versus 1 year of Pete Alonso, if the Blue Jays make that trade, that would be a really bad trade, in my opinion, like for the
Hmm.
Jays. And I think like the Mets would do that in a second. I think the Mets would be thrilled. They would be like, because Vlad, you're getting your age 25, 26 seasons of a guy who's already hit 48 bombs in a major league season. And I know this was a down year for him, but like, next year,
Hmm.
what's your kind of, mediocre projection for Vladdy? 30 home runs, 800 OPS,
Mm.
something like he did this year, maybe a little better. Like that's not bad. And this is a guy who, plays with a lot of energy, has a huge amount of upside beyond that floor. And there's 2 years of him. So,
Hmm.
to me, Vladdy isn't the problem. Vladdy was the problem with their game two loss, or one of the problems with their game two loss. But Vladdy isn't the problem with this team. I think Vladdy's a really, really good player. He needs to look at himself in the mirror for
Hmm.
sure, with the base running and the decision making and everything that happened this year. And he said that he intends to get better in every possible way. But I don't think Vladdy's the problem with this team.
Here's what I would say is I think it would be a mistake for this front office to look at the offense and say, hey, Bo had a down year, which he did. Like ultimately, Bo ends up having a year that is a little bit below where you expect him to be. Some good offensive stretches, it's kind of a classic Bo season, but ultimately you want a little bit more. Springer, to me, is regressing. He's 33 years old. I
Yep.
don't think that that's going to move in a positive direction. I don't think that you should be
Yep.
expecting positive regression. In fact, I would say that you almost got fortuitous this year in terms of the way that he stayed healthy, considering the years before that. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., like how much of an uptick are you expecting on him? Because that's going to be a major question for me if I'm not shopping him at all. If I'm not doing that, I'm thinking to myself, okay, we actually do believe that he's going to return to closer to the major league MVP, right? Than just, oh yeah, he'll be that floor projection that we're having here. And then Dalton Varsho, same thing. These guys already made a huge mistake thinking, hey, this guy could end up skyrocketing past his numbers. We think that there's a lot more here offensively because, yeah, now to me, the body of work is pretty clear. Like, he is what he is offensively. And
Yep.
maybe he'll probably hit for power again, just like he did this year. But yeah, that at bat to close this series, I think was pretty emblematic of, yeah, this guy's going to be overwhelmed by guys with plus plus stuff. He's not
Yep.
going to be able to get knocks against them. He's not going to be a middle of your lineup bat. And so the rest of it comes to, okay, well then what do you think that you can build a studly offense around these guys? And I'm looking around and saying, I don't think without removing pieces, I don't think you can do it through free agency. And I certainly don't think that they can be relying upon, Addison Barger or Relvis Martinez coming up for this team and all of a sudden being like, that's the missing link to this group. And so that's just it to me. That's why I do feel like it's going to have to be a trade is I don't really see the pathway otherwise.
Yeah, I actually can see a pathway. I think that if they go out into free agency, and they're going to have to add multiple players, right?
Hmm.
Because they don't have a left fielder, and they don't have a second baseman necessarily. They don't have a third baseman, and they don't have a DH. So there are four spots
Do you
that
think they could be looking at catcher too, though, considering Danny Jansen just never stays healthy?
I think they're okay at catcher.
All
I
right.
think they're fine there. But it's interesting. Like, and just to go back to your outfield point for a second, completely agree on Springer. This is a guy of 34 years old right now. He just
Hmm.
had his worst full season in the major league. Like, he was healthy, which good for him, but he had his worst full season in the major leagues. He's 34 years old right now. So 3 more years in that deal. I'm not saying he's not going to be a good player. He has been a good player with the Blue Jays. I'm not saying otherwise, but he is a good player who is declining. So that's the reality there. And to your Varsho point, totally agree. You and I can see it. All the pro scouts in attendance can see it. He swings through high fastballs, and that
Hmm.
is a hole in his swing, and it's a problem. So, but in any case, like I think that the Jays' solution here is to add. And so you have to go out, you have to be willing to add two real major league hitters and probably a couple part time, let's see, minor league deal type, incentive laden, free agents as well. And then you bring in the Davis Schneiders, you bring in the Orelvis Martinez's into camp,
Hmm.
and you see what happens. But you need to add two real major league bats.
Hmm. Again, when I'm looking at the free agency list, it's really not too impressive to me. Like, you can bring Teoscar Hernandez back.
And he's one of the better ones.
That's what
Teo
I'm
would be
saying.
like, yeah. And then, like, the Jays might end up doing someone who's not quite as splashy as that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Like, what if it's Heimer Candelario?
No,
Like,
and I don't want to. That's what I'm saying. I think that's a mistake, is looking at this and saying, hey, we can just get a couple of other bats and we'll be fine. We'll go to free agency and we'll say, hey, we'll grab a couple of maybes off the pile and surround this core and say, yeah, it'll be all right. We'll have some positive regression plus a couple of maybes that are a little bit more offensive than the guys that we had last season. And this offense will figure itself out. Like, I just think that it needs to be a little bit more drastic than that. There's got to be, to me, if you're going into this offseason and you're this group, and you said it, this is emotional time, right? This part of it isn't. This group needed a cleanup hitter all year long. Like, Dalton Varsho started there. And then all year long it was, hey, you guys need a cleanup hitter. Hey, this isn't working out. You can shuffle it all you want. You need someone else that's going to be in your top 5. And then they went into the deadline and people thought, okay, maybe they'll be able to scratch and claw and grab one of these guys. And by the way, there was a couple of those dudes, like I'm watching Mark Canha have a real impact and saying to myself, he was basically free. You didn't go out and get him. Fine, whatever. Who cares? But I'm saying more than that. Like, I think that this team is going to need a stud to basically inspire some more confidence within this group moving forward. And I don't see that in free agency. And so that's the thing to me, is like, I don't see who that bat is in free agency unless you basically throw a Hail Mary and connect it.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Like, do you get Rhys Hoskins coming back from a torn ACL? Do you get like a Josh Bell? Like
No,
I said,
not Josh
Candelario's out
Bell.
there, like,
no,
yeah,
God, no.
Jock Peterson seems like a very Blue Jays player.
This is what
to
I'm
me.
saying. This is the maybe pile. This is the maybes. Like, it just that's so much maybe.
Yeah, and I think, like, the Jays are going to be shopping in that aisle of the free agent market. Like, there's no question about it. They will. It's a question of how they hit on those. And look, they've been really, really good at finding pitchers, right? Like, we could have said the same thing last year about Chris Bassett. Oh, Chris Bassett, what difference is he going to make? He's a back end starter, whatever. They go out and get him. He's amazing all season long. Didn't see him in the playoffs, but that's another story. And this is a front office that's really nailed their pitching, but they've not created a good offense. And so I think too, it's got to go beyond just the front office decision making on the free agent front. Like, it also has to extend to what is happening internally with their systems, their processes. On the hitting side, is it good enough? Is Guillermo Martinez a good enough hitting coach? Is Dave Hudgens a good enough hitting coach? These are real questions, right? Like, and I'm not saying I know the answer. I'm not trying to hint at this in like this opaque way. I'm not trying to say that I think they should be fired in this oblique way. I just think, like, look at it, because I don't know, it doesn't seem to be working great. At best, it's working like okay. And if your conclusion is, yeah, it's okay, fine, but maybe there's a way to do something better here.
I agree. And to me, it would be you don't need to sit opaque. I don't think you can bring back those coaches, period. Like, that's just after this season, you got to have some turnover there. But again, if we're talking about what I think would be a mistake, it's simply going into next year being like, hey, we got new hitting coaches. I'm like, I'd like to see the history of baseball. I'd like to see the history of offenses where it was like they brought in a hitting coach and then just all of a sudden everyone looked amazing. It's kind of like, again, to do cross-sport trauma, how when you change the power play coach, and they're like, they brought in this power play guy, and now he's going to be, that's going to be completely different. They're moving one guy to his offhand, and you're like, all right, that seems like something, I guess. I don't, no offense to hitting coaches. When the Guillermo Martinez story started to get bigger, I started to ask some players, hey, how much does this matter? And the response I got back pretty much universally was minimally.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think that's fair. Now, even if the impact is minimal and there's an impact to be had, you take it. So that's where you and I both land on, like, hey, you got to be open to it.
But I'm saying, like, if you go into next year and you're like, then you know what? Then trot the hitting coach out first on opening day, home opener day. Like, when it's the flag, before the flag comes out, put the hitting coach in the center, put him on the mound, and have him throw the first pitch and be like, hey, everyone, we know you're paying your hard-earned dollars. This is the guy. This is the new face of the franchise.
Yeah, it's on the players. And, like, look, we're talking about Vladdy a lot, and, like, that's fair. He
Hmm.
is a guy who's reached really high heights, but at the same time, George Springer could have, I don't know, hit a 2-run bomb at some point in this series. I think he's
That'd be
got a few
nice.
singles
Hmm.
in the Blue Jays playoffs. I think he's got maybe 4 singles, and that's not nothing. That's better than some players have done. But there was a chance for George Springer, the highest paid player in Blue
Yeah.
Jays history, to have a signature moment. And I'm not putting it all on George Springer either, but like, look, Vlad Jr. is 24 years old, and it's not like he said he's the second coming of Miguel Cabrera. George Springer signed for 150 million big ones,
Hmm.
and I think the Jays are still waiting for that signature moment.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do. Of course, that's fair. They gambled on him being the stud around these guys and him being Mr. Playoffs. And yeah, he hasn't been that for this team. So basically, what you're saying is get a hitting coach in a trash can.
Hey, it worked for
Yeah, it's
Houston.
worked for Springer before. It's like hitting coach, trash can, World Series, let's go. This is what I'm saying. Even though about the maybe pile with the old guys is there's 2 factors here. One is yeah, you're grabbing again likely someone that's in the decline of their career or someone who yeah is a little longer in the tooth. We'll see. I mean, Candelero I think is only 29. He's the guy you mentioned, so that's not exactly the same thing, but also yeah, not exactly the biggest, sexiest name. Maybe it works out. But yeah, I think that what you need now is a sure thing in the middle of your lineup. You need someone that you're saying, yep, no, we're not guessing that this is going to be 30 home runs. We're promising that this is going to be 30 home runs. Because, yeah, I don't think that you're going to get that power from Springer. I'm not sure anymore you're going to get that power from Vladdy. And, yeah, I don't see where the other guarantees are in the lineup. And I certainly don't see them coming up anyways. So, like, that's that
Well,
one to me.
and just to jump in real quick there.
Hmm.
So I think to some extent, the big guys in the lineup probably already have to be there, like George, Vladdy, Bo.
Hmm.
And when I'm looking at the best offenses in baseball, sometimes it's the guys that come out of nowhere, like the
Hmm.
Texas Rangers. They have an elite offense. But
Hmm.
going into this year, was anyone like Robbie Grossman, Ezekiel Duran, Leody Taveras, Nathaniel Lowe, and Jonah Heim are studs? Mitch Garver, like would a
Jonah
lot of
Heim,
Jays
yes.
maybe,
Yeah.
but like really it
Yeah.
comes down to Garcia, Seager, and Semyon
Yeah.
and adding amazing depth around that. So there's nothing wrong with adding depth guys. Like as
Yes.
long as your big guys show up, there's nothing wrong with adding depth guys.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't think that any of the Blue Jays now are like the Corey Seager track record. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I I think that if you were talking about like, hey, which 3 guys would you rather have right now if you needed to win a series, I think that answer is pretty clear. Like,
by far.
not the Blue Jays guys, right? Like,
By far.
it's like, yeah, if you give me those 3 Rangers guys and swap them out for the 3 Blue Jays guys, then yes, I think you construct the team that way. But otherwise, I'm like, oh, you might need a little bit more if you're working with a group that is a bit lesser. All right, so that brings us to kind of, yeah, I guess to close this out, it's like everybody's said it, everybody knows it, but yeah, 1 extra base hit and 1 run in 18 innings of playoff baseball. You can tell me that's a small sample size all you want. To me, that's a death knell for saying you can run back this offense and have it just be, some depth players around the edges here. The question is, who gets to make these moves? Because again, referencing the Samson. So 2 days ago, I talked to Morosi. Yesterday, I talked to Samson. Both of those guys indicated pretty strongly to me that they don't see a front office shakeup of any kind. They don't even see a managerial shakeup of any time. Do you think that has moved in any way in the last 48 hours or the last 24 hours?
I don't think so. I
Yeah.
really don't. I think that John Schneider is safe. I think that Ross Atkins is safe. I think they're both coming back.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's like that has been my impression throughout this entire, we talk about emotions, right? The entire turbulent time of September, losing 4 to Texas, winning against Boston, having the chance to clinch against Tampa, going like my impression the entire time from talking to people in the organization has been that yeah, the Blue Jays value having some sort of structural and internal stability from year to year. They do not value making impulsive decisions. That's Mark Shapiro on down. And I don't think that Ross Atkins is going to lose his job. I don't think that John Schneider is going to lose his job.
Hmm.
And like, again, we're in the emotions of it right now.
Hmm.
We're in the emotions of it still right now. So I don't, I think that I'm sure there are a lot of fans that would love to see John Schneider fired and would love to see Ross Atkins fired. I know that's true. I don't see it happening this year.
What I will say is, all right, So you're going to go into next season and you're going to say, we're bringing back all the brass. We are more than likely not going to trade a member of the core. And you're going to try to go around the edges with some free agent signings and bringing up some of your minor leaguers to replace some of the vets that you've lost this year. I think you will have a strong carryover of the sentiment that the fan base has right now to the following season. And I would say that is a pretty damn big risk for the Toronto Blue Jays to take the fan base lightly like that. To just say, don't worry, they'll all show up. Everyone will still be at the stadium having a grand old time, and that things won't turn sour quickly. I think they will. I think you start to have, a bad month. Again, cross-sport trauma, the Leafs thing. They were lucky to turn it around. If you remember last year, and I don't know if you do, but they started the year ice cold. They went on the road on the West Coast, and they got thumped by bad teams. Like, they had embarrassing performances against bad teams. And what ended up happening? The fan base was apoplectic. And they righted the ship, and they calmed it all down, and it was all right from that kind of point throughout the season. But baseball is a different animal. There's nothing else to kind of distract you. It's just there. It's standalone. And, yeah, we know how much they're going to covet gate revenue, TV ratings, all of these different things. I think this fan base needs something. Like, I really do. Yeah. I think that this fan base needs more than Candelario and a new hitting coach. And it would be a gross mistake if they decided that they could kind of like get away with this with the same front office. Like, I do think that there's got to be one major change, and you don't see it where it's the pitching staff, and we're talking about how it might not come with the bats and not going to come with the front office, it's not going to come with the manager. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, that's a scary proposition for this group.
So I actually think you make a great point there, and I haven't actually allowed myself to think far enough ahead, but I think you're actually so right that next year, if they kind of run it back and make some changes and make some additions, next year, if they get off to a slow start, fans would be mad. And it's because this season, we all have like a reserve of patience for a team or for anything. And I think this season, the Blue Jays kind of spent whatever credibility or patience they have with their fans. I think they spent a lot of it. And so, I think it's probably in short supply after losing, 4 consecutive really it's 7 consecutive playoff games, but in the last 2 years, they're 0-4 in the playoffs. That is going to take a toll on a fan base. And so let me ask you this, JD, as someone who's, I know you're a journalist as well, but you're also like a fan.
I'm not. I'm a fan.
We're right.
That's very nice. But when people tweet that at me, they're like, "You're supposed to be a journalist." I was like, when you said the thing about Vladdy, where he's like, he never promised he was giving me Miguel Cabrera. I'm telling you right now, I am not a journalist. Period. Like, this is
good.
I did not. I went to a sports journalism school, and I guess I retained nothing. I have no standard. There's nothing here. This is a fan with a microphone.
Tom Verducci, he is not, folks. Okay,
no.
So in that case, then tell me this: like, what would you want to hear from? Because this is going to happen in the next week or so. Yeah. What would you want to hear from the Blue Jays when it comes to tone, when it comes to accountability?
So did you see Jerry Dipoto?
Oh my! I mean, that's a whole other.
The
podcast,
opposite.
But yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So the opposite. I'm on record with this. I think that it would go a long way for the fan base, and I think it would go a long way for this team to fire Atkins. And then I would let the new general manager come in with Shapiro and decide whether or not Schneider should go. I don't think that Schneider had a great year. I know that it wasn't solely his fault for making that decision with Barrios, but I think that sometimes a traumatic thing happens with the fan base, and that this playoff loss, the way that it went down with, again, 1 extra base hit and a scarring Toronto moment, that you cannot just say, hey, we trusted the math and we came up with a formula and we stand in our conviction and, fly in the face of everyone that's so angry with you right now. I think the way that I would do it, if it was Mark, and I know that he's a loyal guy, and we always play the thing of like, they're the smart, cool, calm, collected group that always run it over. I actually do believe in continuity. I think it's extremely important in sports, but this is year 7. And I think if I was Shapiro, I would be going, I need a new voice in the room to take fresh eye look at this baseball team to see what it is that we're missing. After 6 playoff losses, after invoking the same strategy multiple times with our analytics group and this, projection model that we've done here with our starting pitchers, We need a different voice to at least say what do we have here? What are our convictions that we strongly believe in, but what could someone else say with fresh eyes? I would remove the general manager and I would bring in someone new. And even if that's an internal person, right? Because everyone always brings up the Houston Astros guy, how he's like, I always forget his name, but
James Click.
That's it, right? Click. Even if it's him, I don't care. You're saying this is a winner and this is someone we're elevating within the organization. Like it can be surface value. Like you have to do something optically to tell people that it's going to be a bit of a different process here moving forward. So I think that would be the tone for me is like there has to be accountability somewhere for this. There has to be accountability for 7 seasons where you haven't won a playoff game. Like, I'm sorry. 2016 was now a long ass time ago, and that wasn't their baseball team. Like, they haven't won a division. They were third, Ben. Like, they were third in the division this year. That seems to be the point that everyone keeps missing in all of this is like they made the playoffs. They made the wild card. It's like, you're allowed to win the division. They were supposed to win the division. They were supposed to have a bye this week. We were all supposed to be waiting for the ALDS. That's what everyone told us when they were projecting this thing. If you go well under projections, which is frankly what this team has been, where do you lay accountability? And so that to me is what I would be doing with the messaging is that there is going to be accountability here. We hear you. We understand this is an entertainment product, that there is a true frustration up top with what the results have been and not playing it down to, well, we feel as though a Chapman hit could have gone a certain way and that was some like slight upticks from our guys. We had some regression, some bad luck, some bad bounces and a good team. Like that messaging is not going to fly. It has to be a message of accountability from up top.
It does. It does. Yeah. And I think just so there's a lot there. And I think that's
sorry,
really well
I ranted
said.
because you were like, what do you want? No. And I was like, blood.
Yeah, no, I like it. I asked because I wanted to hear it.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I think, when it comes to your point about the division, that is so true. Like, yeah, guys, there's a way to not be bounced in the wild card round every year. Like, there actually is a way around this. You just get that first round bye. You don't have to worry about the randomness of a 2-game series. So I'll tell you this, like for me, what I would say if I was in there, like I think someone needs to own up they made a mistake. They had the best intentions with that move, the Barrios move. They wanted to win. Obviously, they wanted to win the game. They thought it was going to, but they messed up. And I think someone needs to say that instead of just saying, because the alternative is to say, we believe in our process. It didn't work. It didn't work. We're doubling down. We're tripling down. We believe it was the right thing. And it just didn't work. I think someone actually needs to say, we messed up. Our process had a flaw. We thought it was going to work. We thought we had to figure it out, but we actually missed something. Because look, I understand, like tactically there was a case for it. And tactically we could have a whole discussion about that. But like in looking purely at the tactics, maybe you're missing just how nasty Barrios was on that day. And maybe you're missing the fact that there's the potential of a cost here. If you try to make that move and it backfires, there is a real human cost here as far as what that's going to do to the trust between the players and the coaches and even the fans.
See, to me, that reminds me of the South Park Exxon Valdez episode where it's like, we're sorry. Like, that's just, it's not, hey, is all the oil out of the ocean? No, but we're sorry. And the other part of it, too, is, like, I get it. And if someone does apologize, I think that goes some ways to the fans where some of them go, hey, at least maybe they're going to change. But then I'm looking at it and saying, so wait, then it's not your conviction, right? Like, so wait, now you are going to mend your strategy to the wills of the fans and the people that cover this team?
Well, it's not to the fans. It's not to the fans,
yeah,
though, because it's not about conceding to the fans. Like I've talked to baseball people about this because I've texted a fair amount in the last few days, a couple of days about that whole decision, right? And I know some really analytical people in the game, and I wanted someone to say to me that it was the right call. I honestly wanted to hear that perspective from someone because it just would have made it make a bit more sense in my mind. But even in talking to analytical people who are in charge of analytical departments with other teams, no one was saying that to me.
Woof. No one is tough. Like no one is a really tough quote. Yeah. Okay, last one. You will be there. What is the question you're going to ask?
basically trying to nail down what went wrong. I'll ask
Uh-huh.
a lot of questions. I mean,
Yeah.
why was the base running not good enough? What's next for, Vlad Guerrero Jr.? What's
Uh-huh.
next for, the pending free agents? I think that what's next for the coaching staff because we know Louis Rivera is not coming back.
Yeah.
What does that mean for the coaches? So there's some very specific questions. I'll ask some of them. I'm sure my colleagues on the beat will ask, a bunch of the other ones. But there are like 6, 7, 8, 9 like factual questions that kind of have to be asked and answered.
So I probably won't get to talk to you like on the day because it'll likely be, well, as we said, the Leaf season opener where they bury this thing. But yeah, I always do truth serum, right? You get to take the truth serum dart and you shoot it into one person's neck and you get to ask the like one question they're going to give you a completely truthful answer on. Then what's your truth serum question? Like who are you shooting the dart into whose neck and then what's the question?
Hmm. Um, okay, that's good. Yeah, I would say Mark Shapiro, who do you blame?
Yeah. And he's like, myself. You're like, oh no.
I'd want to know.
Yeah, no,
I don't
of
know.
course. No, that's a good one. Who do you
Yeah.
blame
What
is
would you say?
I think it's gotta be yeah, I think you have to choose Shapiro. Um yeah, and I think the question that I would shoot in is so what changes? Or like what's the number one change? Because I
Yeah.
think it'd be interesting. I think there might be a scenario in the true serum as it's coursing through his veins that he goes, we got to trade Vlad. Like I really do think that might be a thing.
I don't expect the Blue like I'm not sitting here thinking the Jays are going to extend Vlad to a 10-year deal anymore.
I
I'm
know.
really not.
Yeah,
But I don't think they're going to trade him.
I don't think they're going to either because it's a really difficult trade to make. This is just the truth serum dart question is like, yeah, maybe it's even more poignant. Maybe it's like, can you win if Vlad is one of your two most important players? Like,
And it's possible that Vlad Jr. is not a franchise changing player, right?
I
It's
think it's
possible.
probable, to be
Um,
honest, at this point.
yeah. And look, like there were tons of expectations. His dad's in the
Hmm.
friggin' Hall of
Yeah,
Fame,
man,
but maybe he's a very good player. Maybe he's
which is fine.
and that's fine. You should be able to win with a very good player. So again, it's not on Vlad Jr. If he's a very good player and like brings all this energy and really good vibes and like I don't know, Vlad Jr. shows up, he really cares. Like he makes mistakes, but he really cares. He's not a
Hmm.
bad dude to have around from a baseball standpoint. I don't know, you should be able to win with that.
Yeah,
Very good players help you win.
that's not the case I'm making here, though. It's like I think
Yeah.
Vlad is a fine baseball player. I think he's a above average hitter, all of those things. But the way that this team is built right now is under the premise of this guy is a superstar in the middle of your lineup. And I can tell you that how I felt with him at the plate in just about every major moment this year, right? Runners on, whatever. And I know his numbers with runners on were fine, but like I was talking to Blake about this, I'd love to actually have someone dig in and show me the garbage time ABs here, right? Like the high leverage Vladdy moments this year. Just my gut watching him play was not, oh, damn. Like we knew what it felt like to watch Josh Donaldson in a big spot, right? Like
Yeah.
he's coming to the dish and you went, oh, like the whole stadium is going to shake. Like the other team is going to know that guy is at the plate. Jose, like Bautista, like all of this, Edwin even. And I don't have that feeling with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. anymore. Like that's not
Nope.
there. I don't sit there and go, I think that teams fear him. I think they go, yeah, we'll be all right here. We'll be fine. Anyways, we gotta let
Yeah.
you go. I always love our chats. Thanks for the time, buddy. And yes, I'll probably be texting you a lot. Just put your phone on silent during that media conference.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, JD.
Ping,
Have a
ping,
good one, man.
ping. See you later, buddy. Ben Nicholson-Smith at the letters. And of course, MLB editor for Sportsnet.